Order at 6 o'clock. Can we please have the roll call?
Councilmember Martina. Here. Councilmember Parnet.
Here.
Councilmember Cantor.
Present.
Councilmember Turner. Here. And Mayor Barnes.
Here. Chief?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, acceptance of agenda or urgency items. Kelly, do we have any urgency items?
We have to-
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to accept the agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Consent agenda. The following consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. Waive the reading except by title of any ordinance under consideration at this meeting for either introduction or passage. Approve the meetings of the City Council regular meeting of November 19, 2019. Approve the warrant register of December 12, 2019. Confirm the continuing existence of a local emergency for the Mendocino Complex fire. Confirm the continuing existence of a local emergency for the February 2019 storms. Confirm the continuing existence of a local emergency for the October 2019 PSPS. Direct the city clerk to prepare the 2020 Matty Act appointments list and post at City Hall and at the Lakeport Public Library. Approve the side letter agreement for the City of Lakeport Police Officers Association enacting the 7K exemption to the Fair Labor Standards Act. Review and file the fiscal year 1920 first quarter financial update. Would any member of council like to pull any of these items? Anyone from the public? Seeing none, I will bring it back.
Mr. Mayor, I move for the approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. I will now turn it over to the city. Oh, no, I won't turn it over yet. Ha ha. Not done with me yet. Do we have any public input? Public input, any person may speak for up to 3 minutes on any subject within the authority of the city council, provided the subject is not already on tonight's agenda. And I have a note here from Michael Green.
I just made it under the wire. I was happy to attend this Tuesday's meeting of the Board of Supervisors, where there was a fascinating presentation on youth tobacco use and vaping, made by the Health Services Director Denise Pomeroy and other staff. She's presenting several options to the county, and she informed the board that also the city of Clear Lake is looking at some options about how to identify what's going on with the youth and vaping. And of course, Mr. Cannabis here, there are some crossover. Cannabis vaping has some health issues associated with it too. And without boring you with the details, I just kind of jumped to right in Denise's face and I said, this sounds fascinating, we would love to have you come to the city, but of course, I would love the city to make that invitation. There's a lovely PowerPoint, and one thing of note that the city of Clear Lake is looking at is a TRL, and I forget it's a tobacco, TLR, it's a tobacco license, tobacco retail license. That would be kind of an overlay on top of what the regular state tobacco license is. And that would be a way to apply some fees and fines and actual enforcement so you can actually combat underage purchases. And it's a much more complex issue than that, but I do encourage you, if you have the time and the bandwidth early next year, to invite county staff to present what's going on with the county and with the city of Clear Lake, and there may be some synergy we can do with the city. And with that, I would just leave this with.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. I saw somebody else raise their hand. Come on up.
The meeting was kept from me, so that I'm not really prepared for this, so I'm just going to get off the top of my head. My name is Donna Marie Carver. I live at 1400 South Main, number 70 in Lakeport, right there across from General. And we have been taken over from, and we know the identity of it right now. Right now, to say that they take over December 1st, and our rent will be raised to $60 as of the March rent. And as far as, I believe ours was already, it's not within the guidelines of them being able to raise our rent. If that is the guidelines, I'd like to be able to at least have a 5-year cap on it. And we did a petition around the whole park, and they all signed it. And I looked at the petition, and I'm like, before the lady doing it, and we have a class action also on you, or on them, excuse me, it's not you. And so it was said that, that to do a petition, so he did that, and the whole park signed it, excluding one person. And when it came to that person to sign, it was the last one for us to do, he took the petition. And I said, didn't you copy the petition as you were going? And she wasn't aware that she needed to do that. And I've been out of the hospital, so I wasn't going to be able to, I wasn't going to be able to be there for her for the questions that she needed answered. But I wanted to state claim that I was here today to listen, and I don't believe it's on the agenda, and I don't know if it will be soon, but you'll be able to hear from us eventually on this meeting.
Okay, and you said that was 1400 South Main?
In apartment 7B, or trailer 7B.
And if I understand, somebody bought it and is raising the rent.
But they bought it for $2.7 million. They have money, they have lawyers, so it's just us little people trying to not get it, you know, we want to live in our homes, we pay for our homes, you have to be a homeowner to do that. We don't have renters, we don't have anything, in any of them. We're doing everything correctly, everything we're supposed to do right, everything on what, the handbooks that we have given. You know, and I've been having an extra pontoon boat and a Coleman, and I went down and spoke to them about it, my property, said that was fine, everything's fine. So they're really being hospitable with that, but as far as the rent increase on our space, and the other ones are just more than that. I just have a single one. The other with the double wide, they're paying over $600, that's what I heard. We have to do single trash cans, and that's gonna be crazy for the city. And we have to do our own water, so we have to get meters, and we just can't afford all that.
Has anyone contacted the state?
The what?
Yeah, Senator McGuire's been contacted. Taylor sent out an email.
I've gone as far as I can go, as far as talking with anybody that owns anything, because they just won't talk to me. With probably good reason, because I'm crazy, you know. Person, I saw my cat yet. I need 40 cats to be a crazy woman in my park. I have no cats, so.
So you don't qualify yet?
Not yet, but I'm working on it.
All right, well,
I'm
we'll
50
ship you over some
And they
cats.
almost wanted me out, they were trying to get me out. I turned 55, 11/29/1964, a week and a half ago. So I'm there to say my husband was a Vietnam vet, and he died 3 years ago now. And I was a companion in, and we've been bullied ever since. So that's my story. And so you'll be seeing me holding this funky cat out there on you today, though. Thank
Fair
you.
enough. Thank you. Is there anybody else with public input? All right, seeing none. Now I'll just make sure again. Now I'll turn it over to Kelly.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. At this meeting annually, the City Council holds its reorganization meeting, and that includes the election of the mayor and the mayor pro tem. So what I will do is accept nominations for, first for mayor, and after all, the nominations do not require a second, but do require acceptance of the nomination by the nominee. And then I will conduct an election by voice vote. So if everybody is ready at this time, I will accept nominations for mayor.
I nominate George Spur. If I'm allowed to do that.
Okay. And do you, George?
Of course you are.
I don't know, I've been the mayor, I
Do
can't
you
nominate or
accept the
make a motion.
Yeah.
Okay. So I will call for a vote. Please indicate your by aye or nay. All
Now,
in favor?
you ready? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, there we have our new mayor, Mayor Spur. So, now I will conduct the nomination for the mayor pro tem.
I nominate Benny Parlett, if he's got the time. If you're here, I'm not necessary. I'm fine with that.
Okay, So now please indicate your by aye or nay. Kenny Bartlett for Mayor Pro Tem.
Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Okay, there we have it. So you can switch seats and
I can stay here.
You just switch sides.
For another couple years. You can do that free.
Get out of my chair.
Councilmember Barnes, thank you. You did a great job. It's been a good year.
And then I'd also like to add that our perpetual plaque with all the names of the mayors and their terms will be reinstalled, hopefully after construction settles down, but it has been prepared with Mayor Barnes' term on it.
That's cool.
In perpetuity.
Thank you.
Die. Grandkids.
You do know you got the chair where you can't say anything on the white board, right?
Great. Fantastic.
Okay, one thing that has me a little confused, because I sit on the Lakeport Main Street Association, and they're supposed to give awards out for the Christmas lighting, and I don't see it on the agenda. Is that something they're not
This
supposed
is
to
a
do?
presentation, I don't know, I didn't get any calls about it, but is it wrong, can we put up just the people getting their prizes for the?
You can certainly announce who received prizes, just as long as there's no action taken.
Right, it's not an action.
You're
but
not
it's
voting on
also-
who
No.
gets
No, we're not voting on it.
Okay, so we could add that in.
And would we like to do that now?
Sure, is someone here from the Main Street Association?
Barbara?
Yes. Oh, there's Barbara back there, okay.
This isn't my normal person. Panetti is
Not normal?
But she's not normal. Anyway, we are here on behalf of Lakeport Main Street Association, and I'm Barbara Brunig, and this was the judge who put all the judges together. Yvette, which is down, Ingram? Ingham. See, I knew her a long time, I just didn't know how to pronounce her last name. And we thank you. I think the city, the streets look so amazing with all the lights. Thank you, everybody. It's awesome. It's the best I've seen it. Isn't it? Don't you think so?
Well, thank you to the Main Street Association for buying all the lights that are on the poles. so.
Yeah, and the guys that put them all up there, because we couldn't have done it. But anyway, we are here on behalf of the residents and the businesses for the decorations that they put in their homes. And so we have the winners here. Third place for, for residents is Jackie and Jeff Hansen, please. They're not strangers to us. You even get money on top of everything. Thank you so much. Thank you. And then second, we have Sandra Campos. Sandra, you don't look like Sandra, but that's okay. And we have a check for you too. And aren't these nice the way they did them?
Oh, yeah.
Very nice, I think, the way they did them this year. So congratulations and thank you so much. And first place, Danielle and Christopher Clark. You did a beautiful job. Thank you both so much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
What's their location?
Yeah, where are you at?
On 16th Street.
Are these posted on your website? All the
Yes, I believe they
addresses
are. They are 18873
Yep.
16th Street. And before Sandra is 625 North Main Street. And Hanson's 1457 20th Street. Now for our business winners. We've got third place, and it's the bicycle shop. Jeff? You get money for that, and thank you so very much. And second, we have Campos Casuals. And we know somebody too. Thank you so much. Thank your dad for us also. Thank you. Do you need to know the location of where that is? Then we have a newcomer kind of, Grado Unit. They are first place. Their place looks totally awesome. Come on up. Please. Beautiful job. Thank you so much. It's so good to see you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Anyway, is there anything else we should say? No. Except have a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Anything else? Thank you, the committee and everybody else.
Thank you to Main Street for
God
doing
bless.
this and for all the businesses and residents that make the.
That's what we're here for. Aren't we?
Thanks for rescuing that, George.
Not a problem. Now we'll do council business.
Very much. Thanks, good to see you, Angie. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you, guys.
Kelly, do you want to read this one?
Again, this is the time of year when the city council makes its various appointments to commissions and committees. And the first one we have to look at is the Lakeport Economic Development Committee, otherwise known as LEDAC. As the council will recall, an ad hoc committee was appointed to make a recommendation to the council to conduct interviews, and those interviews did take place in early December. For the LEDAC positions, there were 3 applications. There were 3 applicants, and there are then those same 3 being recommended for appointment. Their names are Pam Harpster, Andy Lucas, and Laura Samuel.
Okay, any questions?
I think it makes it pretty simple. 3 for 3.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
Public.
Public. Anybody from the public want to speak on this? If not, bring it back to the council.
Mr. Mayor, I nominate Pam Harpster, Andy Lucas, and Laura Samuel to the Lakeport Economic Development Committee effective January 1st, 2020, with terms expiring December 31st, 2021.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, another one. Okay, for the Parks and Rec, you ready, Kelly?
Okay, so same idea for the Park and Recreation Committee. This year, there were 3 openings, and the 3 incumbents applied. And they have been recommended by the ad hoc committee. Their names are Jen Hansen, Ben Moore, and Cindy Oostrick.
Any questions from council? Any comments from the public? All right, back to council.
I'll make a motion to appoint 3 members, Jen Hansen, Ben Moore, and Cindy Oostrad, to Parks and Rec Commission effective January 1st, 2020, with terms expiring December 31st, 2021.
Second.
Woo!
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm not trying anymore.
Sorry, go faster. Okay, number 3, appointments to the Lakeport Planning Commission.
Yes, so this seat was vacated earlier in the year, and the recruitment, it went on a little bit and got swept into this process. So there ended up being, I think, 3 applicants for this. And the ad hoc committee is recommending Brent Warrenberg to the planning commission.
Okay, any comments from council? Hearing none. Any comments from the public? We're very quiet today. Okay, back to the council.
Mr. Mayor, I move to appoint Jeff Warrenberg to the Planning Commission to terms effective January 1st, 2020 and expiring December 31st, 2022.
Second.
Okay, got a motion in 2 seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Down. And the last, appointment to the Lakeport Fire Protection District.
Yes, last but certainly not least, as the council will recall, the city and the county last year determined that the city council needed to be appointing positions to the Lakeport Fire Protection District, and the council appointed one last year and is set to appoint 1 member this year. I believe there were 2 applicants for the position that interviewed with the ad hoc committee, and the ad hoc committee is recommending appointment of Andy Lucas to the Lakeport Fire Protection District Board.
Okay, comments from council? Hearing none, open up to the public. Okay, no comments there, so back to council, looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to appoint Andy Lucas to the Lakeport Fire Protection District Board to a term effective January 1, 2020 and expiring December 31st, 2023.
Second.
I have a first and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? Carries. Okay, next item on our agenda is the Community Development Director talking about the Lake Park Promenade.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, fellow members of the council. If you'll recall, at our last meeting, you were presented with a recommendation from the Parks and Recreation Committee regarding possible design alternatives for the lakefront promenade. The phase 1 being the one of immediate attention to go into place with the reconstruction of the seawall in front of Library Park. At that time, they were recommending a wood plank option, and your council, in your discussion, brought up some other potential design options, specifically just a standard concrete paved walkway, and asked if that had been considered. It had not, and you asked that that be taken back to Parks and Recreation to see if that changed their decision at all. And we held a special meeting of the Parks and Rec Commission earlier this week and presented with them, and they came back with kind of something sort of slightly right down the middle, which I believe you have in front of you. Shows a 10-foot wide promenade using the wood planks concrete stamp down the middle for the middle 8 feet, and then providing an unstamped kind of plain concrete border for the 1 foot on either side. So slightly different recommendation than what they had before, incorporating a little bit of both. So we had quite a pretty intense conversation about it, because there was quite some new information that was brought to our attention from the city engineer and the public works director at the last meeting in regards to how the stamped or just a standard concrete path would function with the required scoring that's necessary to for the pathway as well. And so this was sort of the option that the Parks and Recreation Commission is now making. So certainly open to any questions, and I'm sure Doug can answer anything that I can't regarding scoring, which would be almost anything related to scoring.
I hear the backup alarm.
Okay, comments from council?
Well, I'm the one that wanted just plain concrete and pushed for it to go back to Parks and Rec. I do think this looks a lot more enticing with the border and having the wood plank in between, kind of highlights it more as a pathway. I like that. I do like the border. I'm curious I mean, it's all gonna crack, and is this a little better in the long run?
Yeah, with the planking design, you're not gonna see a lot of the microfractures, which you see normally occurring in concrete. And the way that it's stamped and the way that the border's gonna work, we're really hoping to minimize, and you should not be seeing any cracks. And one other advantage going with this planking versus a standard sidewalk is that this is made in 8-foot sections, which is the maximum you can go, but we're going to, with a plank, we can saw cut it. So there's a 1/8 inch actual saw cut that goes, would be transverse across the sidewalk for relief. But being it's only 1/8 of an inch, you're really not gonna notice it. And it's gonna eliminate, catching anything in it where if you have the bigger plane joints, which is just used with a tool, they're quite a bit wider. And we noticed that they have a tendency to catch trash and those kinds of things. We won't be occurring that on the planked portion. On the borders, it does have to have the wider hand score mark on it for expansion and contraction. But that's gonna run longitudinally with the walkway, and we don't see that as being an issue.
Okay, I like it.
Thank goodness.
Actually, I think that's a good suggestion because you can still use the smooth as something you can mow across and not have to worry about it. So. Okay, any comments from the public? Seeing none, looking for a motion.
I move to approve wrong item. I move to approve the proposed concrete design for use along the lakefront promenade.
Second.
Thank you.
I have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you for bringing that back, Kevin.
Get better from you.
Yeah, I
And
think
and thank the Parks and Rec for having their special session to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great design.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the letter of support.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I was made aware by Ellen Flora, the city manager in Clear Lake, who had done some research with the tax collector's office on properties that were delinquent and some that were over 5 years delinquent, which created an opportunity for sale of those properties for the county and the cities to recoup their property taxes. The assistant treasurer tax collector provided the Clear Lake city manager a list of, there's roughly 3,652 properties of 14,191 properties in Clear Lake that are delinquent, with 2024 being over 5 years delinquency. And then the city of Lakeport has 1,334 delinquent properties with 414 eligible for sale. Some of those defaulted properties in Clear Lake have been defaulted as long as 1981 with no sales done. The total defaulted amount currently owed to the county-wide is due about $18.3 million, with about 8.3 that are currently eligible for sale. So that's a huge impact in the county and the city. And not only is this huge loss of funding and revenues, it's also creates blight and creates a lot of issues for the communities. Mr. Flora also sent me a copy of the letter asking for some support for this issue which also affects the city of Lakeport and what's going on. This is an elected position, And so we'd like to support the city, what the staff is recommending, supporting the city of Clear Lake's plight to try to get some of these properties sold. It is a big issue for Lakeport, but it's even a bigger issue for Clear Lake and for the county in general, Tolley County. So Mr. Flora is in the audience, and if he would like to, he could speak to you on what he's been through and the different letters and the people he's contacted in trying to get this remedied. So if you have any more questions for me, I'd be glad to answer.
Anybody have questions?
I have one question. Has the county given a reason why? Have they given any response of why they haven't done it?
Can I have Mr.
Yeah.
Flora respond to that, because he's the one that's actually been directly in contact with them. So.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So to address your question specifically, I think there's just a lot of excuses. The county is intending, as we understand, to have a tax sale in March of up to 300 properties. But there wasn't a tax sale this year, which was initially hoped for and scheduled. It was canceled. And I think over the last 11 years, there's been 7 sales. In the last 5 years, there's been maybe 2 sales. And so with the scope of the number of properties in default, as your city manager mentioned, even having a sale of 300 properties is not addressing the problem. There's more, it's somewhere between 500 and 600 properties a year, I believe, that are going into default. So we're not even keeping up with the annual number that are being defaulted in. Other counties, namely Riverside County, which had a similar problem 10 years or so ago, noticed a real significant trend that once they started having regular tax sales, people actually started paying their taxes more regularly, and then fewer people were going into default. And this is a real big problem for us in the city. Nearly 25% of the properties in the city have delinquent taxes on them, and it's causing a lot of blight. And so just to make sure everyone on the council is clear on this, so as a city, if I don't pay my taxes, the county is required to make up that 1% that I pay to all the taxing entities. So city, the fire district, the schools, they all get their money paid by the county out of a special fund that they're required to have. So financially, the city isn't hurting necessarily from this directly because the county has to make up that amount. Where we get hurt is the blight in our communities. We have folks out there who want to reinvest in our community, and there's a lot of properties that are attractive to them which they can't purchase. And then some of the special districts get impacted significantly as well, like our fire districts, for example, that have special fire taxes or assessments. The county isn't required to make up those assessment amounts, and so they just don't get them. I mean, that's not something that we've done analysis on how significant that is, but we all know the fire districts in the county are hurting, and so it is a real problem. And we've pled with the county that no one is being impacted more financially than the county, because once the tax sale happens, they can replenish the fund that they have to pay us from. Once that is at a certain threshold, they can take that money and just put it into their general fund and use it for whatever they want. And so we appreciate your city manager bringing this forward. We feel like any pressure that can come forward from our communities would be helpful in both the tax collector and hopefully the board of supervisors doing anything they can to address this situation. I can tell you that in my 11 years in Lake County, I've never been involved in an issue where there's been more community members and organizations contacting me saying, thank you for finally doing something to address this situation. So I hope that we can have the council's support tonight. I'll try to address any other questions you may have.
Alan, one question. So you've gone to the Board of Supervisors and talked to them about this, and their response was just that they're going to have a sale in March? Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I can provide a little more background on that. So I believe it was in August that, so because of some issues that the board felt like they had from that office, they created an ad hoc, which was meeting and trying to address some of the, I would just say, performance issues that they saw. And so the chief police from Clear Lake and myself went to one of those meetings and expressed our concern with the situation, let the board know how serious it was for the city of Clear Lake, and asked them to make sure that there was a lot of properties put up for sale as soon as possible. At that time, the tax collector let the board know and us know that she intended to sell 300 properties in March. And that number was based on the budget amount that she has been allocated by the Board of Supervisors. I'm not sure exactly what that's based on, but she said she has the budget to sell that number of properties. And so we felt like, we did mention to the board that we didn't feel like that was enough properties to make an impact on this long term, but anything we can do to help. And then the thing that kind of spurred us into taking some other actions was the fact that, we requested that we be allowed to submit priority properties within the city of Clear Lake to the tax collector. If you're going to sell a small number, at least let us have some input on which ones, because some are more important than others, right? And so I put together a list of 166 properties which were submitted to the county, and they let me know that approximately 15 of those would be added to the tax sale list. And that's sort of when we lost our patience with the process and the progress that was being made. And so along with requesting the Board of Supervisors take some actions, we've also asked the Lake County Grand Jury, the California State Controller, the California State Treasurer, the California Board of Equalization to start an investigation into the tax collector's actions. So, I should point out that while this is a frustration for us and causes a number of problems in our communities, once a property is in tax default, which in most cases, at least for a residential property, is you haven't paid your taxes for 5 years and it's eligible for sale, the tax collector has an obligation to put that property up for sale within 4 years of that date, and then continue offering it for sale if it doesn't sell every 6 years. So that doesn't seem like a particularly strenuous timeline, but I can tell you that the research that we've done shows that over 2,000 properties in the county have never met that deadline. And so we feel like that is negligence of her statutory duty to do so. As the city manager mentioned, we have properties that, the city of Clear Lake was incorporated in 1981, and we have properties that haven't paid their, in 1980, we have properties in the city that haven't paid their taxes since 1981. And so there needs to be some movement on this.
And wouldn't it be important to prioritize which ones? Because there's probably some that will never sell at a tax sale too, some of those lots or whatever. So
Certainly.
you took the time to come up with that list, but.
Absolutely, we believe so. I mean, we have a number of, what we refer to as paper lots in the city of Clear Lake, similar to Lucerne and Nice on the North Shore. So some of those numbers, if you look at them, they're inflated in some ways by parcels that, aren't really developable. And so it's not a big deal to sell those necessarily. But we also have properties on the lake shore that would be attractive for development. A number of other areas that, may have decent houses on them. And for whatever reason, at some point, it's like, why would you even pay your taxes?
Right.
If the county's not going to do anything about it, I mean, why pay your taxes?
Right.
And, at least take the chance that you're going to get away with it for 10 years. So yes, I mean, we don't have to sell all of them right now, but there should be some progress. I think there needs to be over 1,000 properties offered for sale per year to make any kind of progress on the backlog.
Okay.
So basically, if I heard the numbers correctly, that they have to be in default for 5 years before they're up for a tax sale. And 4 years after they're up for 5 years, that's when they get sold. So it's like 9 years, basically?
Well, as I understand the county's process, normally they've used the 5-year deadline for offering properties. But in doing research on this, I learned that there are a number of ways to even reduce that 5-year deadline. For example, 5 years only applies to residential property. So if you have a commercial property here in the city that's in default, it can be sold after 3 years in default. Or as a local jurisdiction, we can actually request the tax collector put any property that's been in default for 3 years or more up for sale. And so there's a little movement on that. And then you don't have to wait the 4 years after it's in default to sell it. You can sell it anytime. It just has to be offered at least once within that 4 years.
Okay. So it could be 5 years, 6 months, and then you can sell it.
Some communities that there's been some outreach done to, counties, they just say, when we kind of have a group of them that are in default, we just have a sale, they just keep up on it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I looked on the website when I seen this, and I seen that the county's last sale that I could find was in June of 2018.
I think that's correct, yeah. And I don't remember the number offhand, but I think it was somewhere around 100 or 150 properties that were offered.
So Alan, is it correct then that the teeter funds, that's the other reason, the teeter funds after paying the required assessments could then be allocated towards future sales, funding increased number of sales in the future? Because if they're going to general fund, then they're discretionary, right?
Yeah, it can be used for building a new park or hiring more sheriff's deputies or anything the board of
Or
supervisors.
selling more tax defaulted properties.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, my research on the budget is even having a small number of sales, 100 properties or something, often brings in, a couple $1 million to the county. So.
And I'm wondering if they could, if they're so backlogged, if they could contract to get these sold and on some kind of percentage for what they sell them for. I mean, it'd be better to do that than to let them sit there.
I think there's a number of options. That certainly seems to be one of them. I think there is support on the board to do something about this, but I also don't think that the tax collector is an elected position. We have no control or authority over that. I think it's an excuse. There's a lot that the Board of Supervisors can do. The letter that we provided them provides a number of ideas that haven't been previously explored.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any more comments from council?
Well, to me, this is an epic amount of irresponsibility when you're talking about 18.3 million. You're selling 300 lots every couple years, but you have 500 or 600 going into foreclosure or whatever. But the biggest thing, and we're seeing it on the North Shore over there, we're trying to get a North Shore revitalization project going over there. If you have no deterrent, especially like for example in Lakeport, where you have a new high fire tax, that some people were shocked to find that it was much higher than $6. It was $6 a unit, and by the time you multiply it times a unit, they get these taxes, and they're like, well, and then someone says, hey, don't pay it. Don't pay your taxes, because they don't do anything about it. They got 1,400 properties, and by the way, it's over 25%, just barely, but it is actually over 25%. And if you have a fire tax and everybody's supposed to be paying it, and they're not getting a nickel of that from all these people, this is epic as far as I'm concerned. This job is supposed to be done in such a way that the county is not on the hook to pay your fees for all the property taxes that you don't collect. They're losing money there, and if they sold this amount that went into collection, 500 or 600 a year, it could be tens of millions, who knows? Especially key properties that someone could put a staff member on and say, what are people looking at, what are the needs? I just think this is horrendous irresponsibility in a position that is costing everybody in Lake County money, and the cities as well, and it's setting a tone to just encourage blight and crime and all the things that we have problems with in Clear Lake and on the North Shore. I just think that this is a a good move forward, but I wholly support this, and any kind of immediacy or a kind of expeditious manner, checking with other cities and municipalities that have ways to do this. It needs to get done, and we need to put pressure everywhere we can, because this is, I had no idea this was going on, but this is huge, and it needs to be dealt with. And thank you, Alan.
Another point that Alan made was that the assessments aren't getting paid. So we have a lot of sewer assessments that are out there that are not getting paid because the property tax is not getting paid. Our property tax, thank goodness to the teeter system, we're getting paid our regular property tax. But any assessments we have on our property taxes, which we have a large, there's many properties with sewer assessments that are not getting paid.
We went through all that trouble to reduce their rates. They're still not paying.
Okay, any more from council? I'll open it up to the public.
I think it's patently unfair to attack a department without having the department head here to speak on this issue. I don't think the city of Clear Lake needs any help stirring the pot on this issue. I think they've done quite an adequate job by themselves. I attended the September meeting when Mr. Flora was there to express his concerns. I also listened to Ms. Ringen explain all the due diligence that has to happen before a tax sale like this can happen. There are many steps. There's lots of due diligence. There's lots of notices. She does have a budget to deal with. And by the way, doing tax sales is not her only duty, right? There is a statutory duty to do a tax sale, but there's not a punishment associated if she doesn't do that. On the other hand, if she fails to do her daily duty to collect taxes from the residents of this county and fails to disperse them adequately to the auditor, she's on the hook personally. She's personally liable for that money, and the district attorney can go after her for that. If you want to talk about tax defaults, don't just talk about this laundry list and how it causes blight. It may certainly represent blight. Certainly it's an issue. But is it something where you have to come in guns a-blazing and accuse somebody without them even being here of negligence? Or what else? Willful omission to perform official duties. Really? Really? Is that what we're going to do here today? Because that's bordering on slander to me. If you want to bring the county to bear, is it really her office, or is it the county that's responsible for this backlog? We have an attorney right here. Is there a petition for writ of mandate? You want to compel the county to take an action? You want to sue her in her official capacity to do something that you want to get done? Bring it on. Take an appropriate action. But sit here and slam somebody in absentia is totally unfair. And especially when I see they were all polite on September 17th at the board meeting, and then they lose their patience. Well, guess what? Their letter screams a lack of patience and a lack of understanding that there is more on Barbara's to-do list than just addressing an issue that has been decades in the making and is not within her capacity, or to my knowledge, the county's capacity to erase overnight. So you can scream fire and brimstone all you want, but I would urge you to, at a minimum, do some additional research. If you sold every tax defaulted property here, would you be getting all the bang for the buck? No. As Barbara said at that meeting, some of these are not, you're not going to get the bang for the buck. They won't be developable. If you actually take the half hour I did to read the tax collector's manual, there's other alternatives in there. If we have the cost of collection is unjustified on some of these properties, just discharge them from the tax rolls. Get that off there, and then the property owner can have another run at selling it in the open market without that tax default hanging over their head. If you want to take, again, it off of the tax, if you want to take it out of that property tax sale altogether, ask the Board of Supervisors to take it off the secured roll and put it on unsecured roll. Leave the debt with the person who owes it, but take it off the property, all right? You've got other options that were not addressed by Mr. Flora, were not addressed by the Clear Lake City Council, and if they want to fight for Clear Lake, let them do it. But if you're going to fight for what is a lesser problem here in the city of Lakeport, I would, one, ask for the common decency that you invite the tax person to be here to defend herself, and I would ask you to do your due diligence and make sure that you have all all the answers to your questions. But I don't think you're even asking the right questions. So I urge you strongly not to do this letter tonight. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Okay, my name is Donna Carter, 1400 South Main, 70. I spoke earlier, and what I'm getting out of the meeting basically is that no county sales means the homes, and they're dilapidated, most of them, that you're trying to get them to pay the old county sales for, causing loss of revenue in our community. I understand all that also. And insurance takes care out for the process to be done, the way it's supposed to be done, and those people are doing that. And I do agree with all of you in your different areas, what you've been saying. And between that, I just want to ask about the crosswalk that's over there by Johnny General. I know 100 people that use that crosswalk. I mean, over 100. I was just curious on that also, as if they put them in pretty. It affects the first trailers in our line, which is 7A, and it'll take this property. I mean, that one's got to go if they're going to be doing that crosswalk. That's how I came up with that. What I really want to say is that my trailer isn't legal by county specs. That's it. And I don't know how much I owe on it. And the old owners was Peg and Pat McDermott, who sold the property just now, December 1st, 2019, for $2.6 million. And that's a substantial amount of money, so I have a substantial amount of cares. And the renters, we can have renters, and it's our own. You have to own the property to live in the property, so no abandonment, rights for 11 days and you're out, that kind of thing doesn't apply. And basically, and I have lived there for 5 years. 2 years with my husband and 3 years as being a widow. Okay, my husband, I'm speaking, it's his voice right now. My husband was,
Hey Donna, right now, we can only talk about this letter that we're trying to
The
decide
sidewalks?
if we're gonna
No.
approve
The letter will.
the letter
have you asked to
regarding
get a
it.
letter like that, or where do I get on the line to do that?
Well, we can talk about that in public comment,
Okay.
which was earlier, and you did a good job then. So we have that information, and we'll all do a little research to find out what's going on
And
over
you know where
there.
I'm at.
And if you have a question about the crosswalk, you're welcome to come
Yes,
to
I
our
did.
community development department and talk to them about it. Okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any more comments about the letter? Okay, seeing no more, I bring it back to council.
I think Michael makes some good points.
Yeah.
My time spent as a county employee, I saw pretty much across the board how both elected department heads and appointed department heads had to figure out how to do more and more and more with less and less and less. So I appreciate him pointing that out. I think, to me, what's important here is that we move forward, that we get the City of Clear Lake's properties resolved, that we could get more up to date. And so if Barbara is, from what we've heard, if she's citing a budgetary issue, then I think that we encourage the board to address that as well. Our letter recommends that our letter says that we support the different suggestions made by the City of Clear Lake to the Board of Supervisors. I like the first three because they're all about getting it done, and that's what we really need to do. Whether or not, whether or not there are issues specific to an elected's office, to me it's almost a separate issue that kind of loses our focus from what we really need, which is getting resolution on these properties and getting them up to date. So that's my position. I would support the first three recommendations. As far as being covered in our letter, if we could amend it to address that, that's where I'm comfortable. And I would support standing with the City of Clear Lake regarding getting a resolution on this issue.
I'm not following you. First three what?
If you look down, it's the letter, City of Clear Lake to the board, an attachment down on page 3. or starts on page 2. The first one is to provide, we recommend the Board of Supervisors immediately take the following actions. 1, provide resources to the tax collector's office to facilitate an additional tax sale in the second half of 2020. The council requests that preparations include no fewer than 1,500 properties to be sold at this auction exclusively from Clear Lake. That seems fair. Alternatively, the county could elect to have a sale of no fewer than 1,500 properties, with Clear Lake receiving slots for a proportionate share of the total properties which are in default, or 30%. Also fair. 2, enter into negotiations with the City of Clear Lake for reduction of fees and penalties for any eligible properties, including those that have been offered at sale and were not sold, or other properties identified by the city to be a priority for sale and investment. And 3, pursue any and all options for bypassing the gridlock of the tax collector's office and facilitating regular tax sales. This could include, but is not limited to, contracting of tax sale management, hiring an employee entirely dedicated to administering tax sales, ideally supervised by someone other than the tax collector. I mean, here nor there, let the board figure that out. Supporting efforts for the retirement/resignation of the tax collector and replacement with someone who understands the overall necessity of managing tax sales and is a creative, communicative, results-oriented professional. I know the board's already met a couple times, even with Barbara Ringen, regarding her upcoming retirement, so that seems like it's already in play. So anyway, those first 3 to me are directed towards solutions of solving the problem that we're having right now.
What about 7?
And 5, demanding a response.
I think that's already been done, demanding a formal response. The board, when they've had these meetings, when the ad hoc committee, if I understand correctly, and Tina, feel free to correct me if I get wrong, but when the ad hoc committee updates have gone on the supervisor's agenda, the treasurer tax collector has been invited to attend. Sometimes she has, sometimes she hasn't. And so, to me, demanding a formal response, it's not as big a deal. It's not like getting the solution done. It's talking more about the reasons that she's already listed prior. So
Okay.
we did, but and then number 7, provide any additional support to facilitate the scheduling and implementation of annual tax sales that address the backlog of defaulted properties and meet statutory requirements. Absolutely. I just didn't read that in that part. Thank you. But yeah, 1, 2, 3, and 7.
Yeah, and the only reason I think that 6 is a good one to at least be aware of is because maybe the Board of Supervisors doesn't have any idea how much they're on the hook for each year, how much money's in there, how much money they're spending, and how much money that is going to waste because it's not being dealt with. And that's just like a fact that you could throw into the mix. I agree that it's not necessarily.
Point. Yeah.
I think that just says, hey, this is what it's costing us. Maybe it would get them to bring forth more effort and give them more resources. Because if they say, holy Toledo, I had no idea that we were funding Clear Lake this and this and that. So
And that information is not immediately evident. When I was researching the paper subdivision management plan, we were focusing on specifically the tax default situation and how much it was costing the county with 10,000 parcels, a number of which were in default to, even past 20 years. And the board didn't really want to have them released back into the open market because that means then more people are buying things that they think are buildable and they come out here and you can't even find it. So when I went down to the CAO's office to request the information on the Teeter Fund, saying I can't find it in the budget, I don't even know where to look, can you help me? It's not in the budget. So that might also be helpful. So that the board, I don't know if you get a separate presentation. I don't remember seeing that in the budget presentations, but that information would be interesting. We can add that in if you like.
I just think that it might lead to more of a compelling reason to get busy. And I'm not all about punitive and all kinds of irrational treatment of somebody, but this is a serious problem, and now that it's come to light, I think that we need to bring to bear resources and need to let the board need to know that whatever she needs or whoever needs it, they need to get it because this is a huge problem. And what's going on now, we're just sliding further and further and further behind, and it's just creating more and more problems. It's going to be a bigger problem in the future if we don't get something going. So
I just don't think that report isn't going to be any big, huge shocker. It's not like the board's going to all of a sudden go, oh, look at all this revenue. Gosh, maybe we want it. You know, they're always looking for ways to maximize.
I'm not sure that that's true because you have, I mean, I know that Bruno's a really sharp guy and EJ's new on the board, Moak's relatively new. I'm not even sure that they all understand all these different bells and whistles and knobs and doors and windows and revenue coming in. I'm not really sure that they would know all about the teeter fund. So that's why I bring it up, because it's like it might be illuminating, because maybe they heard of it and they have an idea about it, but they really don't know what it's costing them. And that's the only reason I say it might be an interesting little foray to get information, to let them know that this is pretty compelling reason to help out this department.
So 1, 2, 3,
6 and 7.
6 and 7. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Kim, you got any 2 cents?
You know, after reading that over and then hearing Michael talk tonight, I'd like to get my hands on a copy of what you spent a half an hour reading, because I haven't read it. And I feel underinformed, quite honestly. I don't have that knowledge that's in that book that he was talking about the alternate ways that things can be done. So that definitely set some doubts in my mind about how to react to this. I like the idea about it being driven toward a resolution. I really like what Mireya had to say, and I could absolutely be on board with that because it is solution focused. And I think that's the course we need to go.
Well, I think that I'm sure that the tax collector has all that information, and that's part of her toolkit, I would imagine. She already has all that. For you to know what the options are is almost like irrelevant, because that's not your job, that's her job. So for you to look at it and say, well, there's other options, well, she has those in her toolkit along with the ones that they normally use. So seeing the report and seeing what the compelling numbers are, and 25% of this, and 500, 600 going in every year, and we're only going to do 300, and we didn't do any last year, we've only done 3 in the last 5 years and 7 in the last 11 years. There's obviously some issues there, and what we're saying, let's move forward. Whether or not she has more tools that she's not using in addition to the ones she already has, I don't know that that's totally relevant to the letter, but I respect that.
Well, it's clear that the city of Clear Lake has put in a ton of time and energy into this because it is affecting the city and it's affecting the whole county because nothing's happening. And our letter is very simple. It's just saying that we support them. And it closes, the city of Lakeport requests this be viewed by the board as its high priority in order to address blighted communities, limiting options for reinvestment throughout the county, wasting taxpayer dollars to support a department with a history of negligence and inaction, and directly causing damage to the city's and the county's finances. It's just saying, look, do something about this, and backing them up for all the time and energy they've put into trying to chase this down. It shouldn't be this hard. This shouldn't be going on.
However, the line in there that specifically points out certain departments' negligence over the past years seems kind of, there's some teeth with that. Yeah.
We could make a simple amendment to this letter on the line that says, we place our full support behind the city of Clear Lake's requests for action from the Board of Supervisors. We could just add regarding the direct and immediate resolution of this issue.
And not speak about negligence.
Well, and I'm not sure that it's even willful omission. It could be a total lack of resources, which, but I'm not giving anybody a free pass. If you don't have the resources in some job in the free enterprise system, you get it. You don't just cry about it later on and go, I don't have the resources. You go to the board and say, I need help. I need people. I need to do hiring. I need a bigger budget. You can't just say forever and ever, I don't have the resources. If you were in a business, you'd be done. You'd be done years ago. You'd been done in the late 80s. And so I can't buy this But I don't know that it's willful. It's just maybe a lack of due diligence is what I think it is more than anything. And we have the Peter Principle going on all over America in corporations and businesses and counties and cities and in the state and federal government everywhere. So I don't know, maybe the willful, I mean, you know, I'm not really sure it's willful so much as it is just kind of like, you know.
Is that word in there?
Yes.
Yeah, it's in the very title, you know. And
Oh, right.
because you can be negligent without being willful about it. You're just like, you don't take the due diligence to be, you know, fully forceful about your job, and you're negligent because you didn't go to the board, you didn't get more people, you didn't get help, you didn't get it dealt with, you scheduled it and then it got canceled. Okay, that's kind of negligent. I mean, it's not necessarily willful, it just happened, well, because you don't have the resources. So, you know, I'm just not comfortable with a free pass. Yeah. But willful is different, like I did it on purpose, I didn't want to sell those properties because I just want to keep paying out that money out of the teeter fund, and no, I have a problem with willful in this and in the Clear Lake letter where it says willful negligence. I think it's just negligence.
Well, this subject line is actually a good opportunity for us to further clarify what we are supporting. We could reword it to say support for actions to remedy the pretty, like, fill in that title there, the
Negligence to perform official functions by Lake County Treasurer.
no, the one that says the proliferation, okay, so support for actions to remedy the proliferation of tax defaulted properties and lack of regular and adequate tax sales within Lake County. Boom, done. There. Now we're directed towards our resolution again.
Okay, support for action to remedy.
To remedy, and then just copy the first sentence of our letter. Remedy the proliferation of tax defaulted properties and the lack of regular and adequate tax sales within Lake County.
And that's clean.
Exactly.
But you know, and it doesn't necessarily highlight the negligence, and I don't like the willful. I'm not too sure about the negligence.
Right, so it cleans that up then.
Yeah, I like that much better.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
And now the reference to the letter, we're saying we like the letter, but we don't like, you know, a 4 and 5. So is that something that we need to say, oh yeah, we're in support of the letter from Clear
We're
Lake?
not really saying the letter, we're saying we place our full support behind the City of Clear Lake's requests for action.
Oh, so the letters
I
are
think
relevant.
it's fine, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I like that much better.
Okay,
It's not so heavy-handed.
change approved.
Okay, so,
But there's that final sentence, well, it's in the third
Appreciate
paragraph
your
at the end about history of negligence.
I'm sorry, what was
The
that?
history of negligence and inaction, did you guys want to amend
Ah.
that part as well? It's the last sentence of the third paragraph.
I'm not sure I want to amend that.
I'm fine with that.
No, I'm totally fine with that. Because it's a history, it doesn't mean now necessarily, could have been in the past, which it has been. And in my opinion, it's current because they didn't go for help when they needed it.
And we're highlighting the office, not the elected.
Person, yes. So it takes it off of one person.
And it doesn't have that word willful.
Yes, I hate that.
It's just,
And this has been going on longer than
Oh, yeah.
Barbara's been there, so
yeah. So it's just
it is a history.
Okay.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yes, thank you.
So what's the motion?
Do you want to see if there's any more public comment?
Any more public
Just
comment
changed everything.
of the changes?
Okay.
Evidently not.
So that would remove
Mr. Mayor, I would move to approve the attached letter to the Board of Supervisors as amended, supporting the City of Clear Lake's request for action on defaulted properties.
Second.
Have a first and second, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it with the amended letter.
Yes, we don't have to change the information.
Actually, a lot of good ideas.
I like better, George.
A lot of good ideas. All right, last thing on the list. Lakeport annexation. Lapco, Kevin.
Good evening again, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As you're aware, the city of Lakeport submitted its application for the South Lakeport annexation project to Lake LAFCO in August of this year. The city of Lakeport did recently receive a letter from Lake LAFCO resulting from their meeting on November 20th, 2019, where the commission decided to defer a decision with respect to the 1997 tax sharing agreement. And instead, the commission is requesting the city and county agree to participate in good faith to a LAFCO-initiated process to resolve the existing dispute. And their letter goes on to kind of recommend two specific actions that they're looking at both the city and the county to agreeing to. The first action would be LAFCO wishes to conduct an impartial fiscal analysis. We did prepare a fiscal analysis as part of our application. The county did submit their own analysis on that, and LAFCO believes the best foot forward to helping to resolve this matter would be conduct a third sort of impartial fiscal analysis. They're also requesting that the city be asked to pay for the cost of that fiscal analysis. We did recently conduct a revised analysis based off of some new numbers, and if the council decides to support this process, we would certainly provide that new analysis to LAFCO as well. The second action would be following the completion of an impartial fiscal analysis, LAFCO would schedule a facilitated meeting between the city and county, and that would be conducted by an independent facilitator from outside the area. The end goal would be to resolve existing disagreements between the two entities and develop a new tax sharing agreement that both parties can agree to. And LAFCO is offering to pay the cost of hiring that facilitator. They've requested that we respond in a timely manner. We received their letter in December. They provided us 30 days, so we're well within that time frame. And staff supporting moving forward with this process. Certainly can answer any additional questions.
Okay, questions from the council? Questions from the public?
One, and it may be answered, I saw it as listed as a non-fiscal impact item. Does that mean the independent fiscal analysis, you're going to repurpose one that's already been bought and paid for?
No, we did some additional ones as part of some of our other negotiations. We're just submitting that as background information to LAFCO. That wouldn't take place we're not requesting it be taken place of an impartial one. LAFCO would actually go out and hire a contractor to do that fiscal analysis.
Okay, so this would be a fiscal impact item?
It actually would be, because the city would be responsible for the cost of that analysis, which that's correct. What Michael's bringing up is that it would impact our finances to pay for the third. Yeah. Thank you for pointing that out.
Okay, bring it back to the council.
I'd just like to point out that there was a piece of information. We had a very productive meeting with the at the LAFCO meeting, and we were all supposed to take off our city and county hats, and it was a very interesting meeting, but we didn't find out until after the meeting that actually the fiscal analysis that the city of Lakeport did was done by the fiscal auditor that was recommended by the chairman of Lake LAFCO, John Benoit, and I think that totally went by the boards and nobody caught it. And Stacy kept saying, well, we already have one, but since we, I guess, ordered it through John, the information came out, and she was fighting hard for the city of Lakeport not to do another one because we already did it. But the chairman of LAFCO, not the director, but the chairman said that we should get an independent one, and so that's where this came about, that we need to get one that's totally impartial, that they hired and we're not any part of it, so everything is clear and there's no issues. But in fact, John Benoit, the executive director, he's not the chairman because Bruno's the director, and he's the one that recommended to our city to get that guy, and then we did it, and now we got to do it again to make everybody happy. But if this resolves a 25-year-old or 20-year-old turf war, I think this is a great move forward, and it's been long overdue, and it looks like everybody's amenable to it. And I thought Bruno's letter was really good, and it looks like we could come to some kind of a climax sometime in the not too distant future, I hope.
Yeah, and I guess why we didn't have fiscal amount in there is because we don't know what the cost is going to be yet until LAFCO makes that contract with them.
Any more comments? Looking for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the City of Lakeport's good faith participation in Lake LAFCO's proposed process outlined in its December 4, 2019 letter in regards to the South Lakeport annexation project.
Second.
I have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. And that brings up with our last thing, miscellaneous reports. Margaret?
Only to wish everyone happy holidays. We won't have any other meetings, council, until after the new year. So best wishes to everyone and to the community for the holiday season.
David?
My best wishes as well for a safe and happy holiday.
Doug?
Just one quick thing, we just had our pre-construction meeting with the contractor that's going to be putting in the sheet pile. We have a tentative schedule. They will be receiving the sheet pile through the holidays and hope to begin construction on January 6th with a completion date of the end of February. And so we're very happy with that. And with that happy note, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Nick?
Yeah, I'll also extend a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, everybody.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. I'll echo those same sentiments. Happy holidays, and Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to all.
Okay, Kelly?
I'll be the one that just doesn't do that.
The cringe.
I have my Grinch socks on. Okay, Maria?
Nothing to report, thank you.
Stacy?
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Mr. Tim?
Thank you all for letting me serve as your mayor for the last year. It was pretty awesome. It was a great experience, and thank you for letting me be of service.
You
Happy
did a great
holidays and all
job.
that
You
stuff.
You did a great job.
Kenny?
The only thing I would report that if anybody's not doing anything tomorrow at 7 o'clock at Fritz Hall, we're Rotary Club in conjunction with the Lake County Record Bee and Bruno's Foods and the Fairgrounds and Scully Packing. We're putting together 500 food baskets. And it's a sight to see. If you want to be part of the assembly line, be there at 7 o'clock in the morning. It'll be done by 8. We start giving away the boxes at 8, and it's going to be done by 1. And it just shows you what a bunch of hardworking people can do in a very, very short time when they have good leadership and motivation, and they're leaders of their community. So it's a really good project. Going to be there at Fritz Hall, 7 o'clock.
Me too, 7.
Nice. That's awesome.
Happy holidays.
And with that, I'll close the meeting.
My favorite thing.
What's that?